Questions and answers for a world in crisis. We welcome you to this series of questions that confront our youth today, as well as all who are seeking a higher and truer way of life, with answers from Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. We appreciate your feedback and the topics you send to us as we continue this inner journey towards self-realization, with the knowledge that a new force is now in the earth, termed by Sri Aurobindo the supramental. Though what one sees on the news and on TV screens around the world are endless scenes of violence and horror, the next step in the evolution is the appearance of a higher man who will be to man what man is to the animal, and will have the power to change destiny. Today's topic is worry, from the Mother. Never worry. Do with sincerity all you do, and leave the results to the Divine's care. Let us live each day without anxiety. Why worry beforehand about something that will probably never happen? It is better not to worry about progress, because worrying only hinders the advance. It is better to open in all trust and simplicity to the divine help, and to have faith in the victory. Live in the consciousness of the eternal, and you will have no more worry. Question to the Mother. I am aware of all my wrong actions, but unfortunately I am not able to control them. That is what makes me sad. Mother, do not worry. Have trust. It is this lack of trust that veils your consciousness. You must not worry about these little things. They have no importance in themselves. Their value is to show us where unconsciousness still exists in our nature, so that we can bring the light there. 13 July 1934. Even if things are not as they ought to be, worry does not help to make them better. A quiet confidence is the source of strength. 11 November 1936. It is quite wrong to go on brooding about the past. The true attitude is to remember that nothing happens but by God's will, and to submit to that will quietly. If you have made mistakes in the past, it is by lack of true surrender. And the only way to repair the mistakes is to surrender truly. But it is not a reason for being upset about it. There is only to remain quite cool and do our best within the limits that the human nature ascribes to us. After all, the whole entire responsibility is the Lord's and nobody else's. So there is nothing to worry about. You must not worry about these little things. And above all, do not believe in fatality. These little failures always have a cause that can be avoided with a little more experience, which is sure to come. It is obvious that what especially characterizes man is this mental capacity of watching himself live. The animal lives spontaneously, automatically, and if it watches itself live, it must be to a very minute and insignificant degree. And that is why it is peaceful and does not worry. Even if an animal is suffering because of an accident or an illness, this suffering is reduced to a minimum by the fact that it does not observe it, does not project it in its consciousness and into the future, does not imagine things about its illness or its accident. With man, there has begun this perpetual worrying about what is going to happen. And this worry is the principal, if not the sole cause of his torment. With this objectivizing consciousness, there has begun anxiety, painful imaginations, worry, torment, anticipation of future catastrophes, with the result that most men, and not the least conscious, the most conscious, live in perpetual torment. Man is too conscious to be indifferent. He is not conscious enough to know what will happen. Truly, it could be said without fear of making a mistake, that of all earth's creatures, he is the most miserable. The human being is used to being like that because it is an atavistic state which he has inherited from his ancestors. But it is truly a miserable condition. And it is only with this spiritual capacity of rising to a higher level and replacing the animal's unconsciousness by a spiritual superconsciousness that there comes into the being not only the capacity to see the goal of existence and to foresee the culmination of the effort, but also a clear-sighted trust in a higher spiritual power to which one can surrender one's whole being, entrust oneself, give the responsibility for one's life and future, and so abandon all worries. Of course, it is impossible for man to fall back to the level of the animal and lose the consciousness he has acquired. Therefore, for him, there is only one means, one way to get out of this condition he is in, which I call a miserable one, and to emerge into a higher state where worry is replaced by a trusting surrender and the certitude of a luminous culmination. This way is to change the consciousness. Certainly, to do the right thing is not cruel or selfish. What is cruel and selfish is to follow blindly one's weakness, and thus to drag another with oneself into a pit from which it is always difficult to come out, and never without losing much of one's time and energy, if not much more and much worse. So do not worry, try now seriously to find out the meaning and the aim of your life, and prepare yourself to carry it out thoroughly and sincerely. Sri Aurobindo. If you cannot call the mother in what you think the right way, call her in any way. If you can't call her, think of her with the will to be rid of these things. Don't worry yourself with the idea whether you have true aspiration or not. The psychic being wants, and that is sufficient. The rest is for the divine grace, on which one must steadfastly rely. One's own merit, virtue, or capacity is not the thing that brings the realization. I shall send the force to rid you of this obsession in any case. But if you can abandon these habitual ideas, it will make the disappearance of the attack easier. 4/1/1937. Aspire for a positive sattwic opening, for strength, for light, for peace, and do not worry or repine if the progress is slow at first, nor grudge the time and labor of preparation necessary before there can be a rapid advance in the yoga. One ought not to worry, but also one ought not to be negligent. That is, one ought not to give the assent of the will or of the reason to these movements, for all assent prolongs their actions or their recurrence. If they do not go when rejected by the mind and will, it is because of the habitual response in the less conscious parts of the nature. These have to become conscious by receiving the light and force, until finally they refuse response to the calls of the lower nature. Do not allow yourself to be shaken or troubled by these things. The one thing to do always is to remain firm in your aspiration to the divine, and to face with equanimity and detachment all difficulties and all oppositions. For those who wish to lead the spiritual life, the divine must always come first. Everything else must be secondary.